Hi guys! If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. See, there's the creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And the best thing of all, it's free. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, you're listening to the Literary World of Sylvia Hubbard, and I am your host, romance suspense author, Sylvia Hubbard. So we have started our recording of Mistaken Identity as our initial podcast story. And if you have listened to chapter 1, thank you. And if you haven't, take a moment and go back and listen. If you don't want to listen as I read, or you'd like to read along with me, check out the book at sylviahubbard.com/entire mistaken. It's also available to download as an ebook wherever books are sold. I do implore you to be 18 years or older, and if you're not, turn off or switch to another podcast more of your age, because even I'm not old enough for this. So when we last left Dana, she had just been found out in a promiscuous position with her brother-in-law, Jerome. So without further ado, let's start part 2 of Mistaken Identity. Dana didn't know what to say or do. The look in his eyes reflected his confusion as to whom he had just made love to, or could it even be considered making love? No, Dana had been thoroughly fucked, and she wasn't going to feel bad about it. But she stifled the satisfied giggle that wanted to burst forth from her lips. Jerome abruptly freed himself, and she gasped as his movement produced an unexpected orgasmic spasm. He quickly fixed his clothes and began to pace his athletic body in front of her as she slowly sat up, feeling a slight soreness between her legs. "Dana," he hissed. She nodded sheepishly as she stood up to straighten her underwear. Surprisingly, out of respect, Jerome quickly turned away from her half-naked frame. Despite what they had just shared, she smiled, feeling a bit honored by his gesture. She quickly slipped into her hideous green dress and laid the wedding dress on the bed over the stain they had created. "Denise is downstairs," Dana said quietly as he turned to face her. Initially, he flinched at the sight of her dress, but then those cool brown eyes settled upon her face. "Why?" She shrugged and lowered her shoulders, embarrassed. "I won't tell," she promised as she moved to unlock the door. He grabbed her arm and swung her around. His lips hungrily kissed her, and Dana felt her pulse quicken as he pulled her against his expansive chest, his large arms encircling her waist and his hands cupping her perfectly round bottom. Damn, he smelled good, he kissed good, and he felt good all over. When he moved away, he whispered, "I want you." Breathlessly, she said sarcastically, "That sounds personal." Shrieks and screams were coming up the stairwell, and they knew Denise was coming back. Jerome practically dragged her into the closet and closed the pine louver doors just as the bedroom door swung open. Dana stood like a mannequin with her back against his chest as they faced the doors. They squinted through the wooden slates as Denise and her entourage sauntered into the room. Denise snatched up the wedding dress. "Hurry up," she screamed at them. Dana felt Jerome press his body closer to hers, but she knew he was just vying for a better view. Still, his breath could be felt on the corners of her ear. She closed her eyes briefly to appreciate the close proximity of his body to hers. Damn, all the other times in Denise's presence, Dana had admired Jerome from afar. He had never come this close unless it was a brief handshake or in passing. Never this close. The sorority sisters hastily dressed Denise in her wedding gown for the second time that day. Denise's best friend Gloria walked over to the disheveled bed and stared at the bedspread. "Who messed up the bed?" Gloria asked. Dana gasped, and Jerome quickly put a hand over her mouth. Denise stopped and looked at the bed. "Who the fuck's been flopping on my bed?" Immediately, the women began denying having they had any contact with the beautiful king-size sleigh bed that looked a hot mess. Dana wanted to whimper in dismay, but with Jerome covering her mouth and his body pressed so damn close to hers, she was more than aware that making any sound was not an option. "Where's Dana?" Gloria asked suspiciously. "Who cares?" Denise sneered. "I'm asking because she's probably the one who did it." Denise seethed. "That selfish, trifling heifer. What the hell was she doing on it? Wrestling with the covers?" Dana wanted to defend her character against Denise's crude comment, but Jerome didn't seem fazed by the malevolence in his fiancée's voice. Instead, his free hand was now easing down Dana's waist and slowly hiking up her dress. She tried to stop his hand, but his lips began to attack the curvature of her neck. Once her thighs were exposed, he moved his hands between her legs and pleasingly massaged her clit until her hips grinded against his groin. He had become a wreck, but his intentions for arousing her were different this time. The hand that covered her mouth moved away to caress her neck and moved to the front of her dress to gently squeeze her breasts, making her nipples instantly hard. Jerome dropped to his knees and positioned her until she was pressed against the wall next to the door. The shrieks and noises on the other side of the door seemed to fade away as his mouth moved in to taste her. He parted her thighs and dipped his face into her crack. His tongue sumptuously teased her puckered hole as his thick fingers dipped into her wetness, heightening her excitement. She was mindless to anything but the exhilaration he was providing in her. The tip of his delicious tongue licked her backside, down the crack and around her labia. Like a starving man, he was eating her pussy like it was his last meal, and Dana was savoring every scrumptious lick. When he stood abruptly, she felt his shaft pressed against her backside, and with all the moistness, he had easily slipped the tip of his hardened penis into her ass. At first, she instinctively tightened up, but his well-placed kisses on her neck and back instantly allowed her to relax. His hand continued to stimulate her clit while he pressed himself fully inside her. She bit her lip to stifle the giggle as he whispered curses of pleasure. The more his hand moved, the more stimulated she became, and his gyrated hips pleasurably thrusting his shaft into her tightness. He had begun to sweat. She turned her head to enjoy his mouth, tasting their essence on his lips and entwining her tongue with his. His fingers titillated her to orgasm at the same time he exploded deep in her ass. She was soundly filled and prayed they had not made enough noise over Denise's shrieking to be heard. "You don't taste like cow." She had to cover her mouth to smother a giggle. "We're so fucking bad," Jerome whispered in her ear with a deep chuckle. In her mind, she said, "Yes, we are. Would it be wrong to ask for more?" When he dislodged, she faced him and watched as he yanked the shirt off the hook to clean himself before straightening his clothes. He leaned in and kissed her softly. She responded tenderly, touched by his gentleness. Taking a deep breath, he said, "I'm not marrying your sister Dana." Thank you for listening to part 2 of Mistaken Identity. I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, make sure you subscribe. You can even leave a message and let me know how I'm doing. I want to thank everybody. This is my first time doing a podcast, and I know that some of those words got me caught up, but I appreciate you guys. Keep coming back and listening, and I hope you come back for more. I'll be doing the next part 3 as soon as possible. So stay tuned and don't forget to share with others. And you can also listen. I said, if you don't want to read with me, you can always go and grab the book at sylviahubbard.com/entire mistaken. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing and hearing from you guys soon. Bye.